Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. And today I'm back to my bread and butter. I kind of did some excursions on my videos, but now I'm back to doing my bread and butter, which is obscure bands from the 60s and 70s, because I just love that stuff. That's my era. That's when I got raised on music. And I love Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath when I was a young headbanger. And so to find these records that were of the same ilk, albeit not as fully realized, it just thrilled me to death. Thrilled me to death back then, and thrills me to death back even now to listen to these records. And some of these bands um, did a lot better in the UK, and they're a lot better known in the US. They definitely were obscure, remained obscure. Collectors are finding out about these bands now, but it's a pure joy when some of these obscure bands are almost as good as the giant bands like Led Zeppelin, have all those same elements, and a lot of them are surprisingly good quality. So another one is Orangutan, Orangutan, and what a strange story about this band. They were originally called Hunter, and then Adrian Miller, their publisher, ended up taking the tapes of the record over to the United States and selling it to Bell Records in 1971. So the band was completely unaware that these tapes ended up going over to the U.S. and being put out as an album. It wasn't for quite a while after that that they found out about it. But what a killer band. Jeff Ciopardi on drums, and oddly enough, the main songwriter, the drummer, the main songwriter, Terry Clark on vocals, Paul Roberts on bass, Mick Clark and Sid Fairman on guitars. And one of the things that makes this band so killer is having two really excellent guitar players, and then also having a vocalist like Terry Clark. Just like the Ashcan record, a lot of these bands oftentimes were really great, but maybe didn't have a good frontman and killer singer. And in both Ashcan and Orangutan, we have somebody that's really a top-notch singer, and the material is really excellent. Kind of like Ashcan and some of these other bands, they slow down in a few parts here or there, trying to show their sensitive side. But Orangutan is definitely a heavy rock album from start to finish, and great, interesting arrangements, and just wonderful twin guitar work. And I love bands like this where the twin guitar work involves linking up, certainly on the chords, or playing chords that augment each other, and then do wonderful interplay on guitars and their lead work. And a lot of the structures of the songs are based on twin guitar work, which makes a band like Orangutan really stand out. And it's kind of funny too that they ended up on Bell Records. Bell Records definitely had a lot of bubblegum hits back at that period of time. And the Sweet, for example, were on Bell, had a huge hit with Little Willie. So I think Bell Records started looking around for possible heavy bands, and they ended up with Orangutan. I'm sure a lot of other labels in the U.S. would have been interested in it. But the other thing is interesting, they're, of course, they're a UK band, and this album was only released in the U.S., and so they were a known quantity as Hunter in the UK, but the European audiences had to get an import of this album to hear it, which is really interesting. And a couple of members of the band used to be in a fairly well-known British band called Jason Crest. And so, like a lot of these bands, UK audiences were very familiar with these players. And so an album by Orangutan, once they managed to get a copy, would have been a big deal, because Jason Crest had a fairly good profile. And one of the other things that's interesting, kind of like the Ashcan album, and also recently I did a video on Sweet Slag. They did this album in a couple days. They didn't spend a lot of money, so they had to be ready to go in to record this stuff. To only do it in 2 days, and there's no overdubs, and that's another thing that makes this album so impressive. It's polished, it's ready to go. They have all their parts down down pat, have a great sound, and just stunning that they managed to record this album in 2 days and record it live. So this is what they sounded like live. And so, wow, they must have been an extremely impressive band live. And although when you read interviews with the members, they talk about the fact that they felt like the album lacked the energy and volume and intensity of their live act, which is probably true of a lot of records. So that whets my appetite even more to think about Orangutan or Hunter, whatever they were called in the UK, and what their live shows must have been like. Because I listened to this album, and I think if there's a version of this that's louder and more intense and more energetic, then they must have been truly incredible live. And I guess they had a high enough profile that, according to one interview, they said that they were being considered to tour the U.S. with Led Zeppelin, which would have been a killer double bill. But once again, it shows that they were definitely a more high-profile band in the UK at the time. Amazing that they slipped through the cracks. But the other thing that whets my appetite is that the Terry Clark was actually their second vocalist. They had a previous vocalist, and they recorded a bunch of demos of that version of the band. So somewhere out there in the vault is a whole another Orangutan album that with a different vocalist, and I assume it's probably as good as the Orangutan album. I assume it's probably the same material or mostly the same material, and it could have been a lesser recording. I'd still like to hear it, but as a demo recording, it's hard to say what the quality would be like. Probably as a 4 or 8 track recording, it probably would have had a lot of energy to it, because the Orangutan album got top-notch treatment. It was recorded at the famous Delane Studios that had 16 track in 1971, which is a big deal. Another reason why the Orangutan album sounds so good. It was definitely recorded really well. And that's something that is really nice to see with some of these obscure records that I've talked about, like Ashcan and now Orangutan, because the fact that these bands got an opportunity to really record a good record makes them that much more interesting and that much more valuable. And so my hat's off to Orangutan. Really obscure. It's got a pretty wacky cover, and was only released in the U.S. on Bell Records. No wonder it's obscure, but it's definitely one of the ones that totally delivers the goods. And so, like I said with Ashcan, if you're into Led Zeppelin and you're into Free and you're into Black Sabbath and you're into Clark Hutchinson and other more obscure stuff, Orangutan is an incredible discovery. So I'll put it below as usual in the links, and you can check it out and see what you think. But if you haven't heard it before and you're into that 1971 UK hard rock sound, you're going to be in fucking heaven. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.